Hey everyone, hope you guys are doing well. Obviously, this is the live stream for our Gameweek 9 sort of review corner. Hope you guys have had a good game week so far. I've had a pretty average game week, but still 3 players to play. One of them, obviously, a little bit of a troll pick. And we'll see obviously what happens with Richarlison. Not expecting much from him, really. We all know that he's probably going to be my transfer out for Gameweek 10. And the plan really is to go towards Saka, but it probably also means I have to drop one of the best players in my team, which is Trippier. So we'll see what happens there. And yeah, let's have a look at chat, obviously, today. 66 with 3 to go, I believe, is still under average. Like, technically, I still have a red arrow so far. But I don't think everyone has 3 to play, so that's a fair point. The problem, of course, is if Madison does well, then I'm in big trouble. So there's that. I do want Son to do well, Porro to do well, but Richarlison, yeah. Look, I actually think I'm going to go out of Trippier, Jay Wavy. Hope you're doing well. Bar, hope you're doing well. Scythe, Tank, Lars, evening to all of you. And nice to see you as well in chat. What's good, Fran? 78 when matters, Son, and you doggy to go. Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. That is perfect. I actually think that probably what I will end up doing is something like either I think actually, so for example, the Brighton mids are quite interesting. So I could actually just go Richarlison to a Dingra and then roll my transfer. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but I actually quite like this idea. That's one option. Another option is simply to do something like maybe Richarlison out, Saka in, and then obviously Gabriel in as well, which is actually probably one of my favorite moves. Simicast could also be Gabriel. So one of those 2 moves could be quite interesting. That would be 2 free transfers being used. The alternative move is to go out of Son as well, and then to go Saka and Martinelli. Now, I don't really love Martinelli just because I think Trossard could easily get the position in the team at times, maybe start a game over Martinelli. So it's kind of worrisome. I don't like Diaby to Douglas Luiz. I mean, he's a penalty taker, but I think he's also been overperforming like mad. I wouldn't do that move. I'd probably just give Diaby the Luton fixture and then sort of hop out of Diaby after that, you know, or hop out, you know, game week 13, for example. Like, for example, game week 13, jumping out of Diaby is not too bad, I would say. Lilas is taking a -8. Haaland, Diaby, and Mbeumo, Stupian to Watkins, Saka, Mitoma, Trippier. I don't know if I like going out of Haaland and Diaby, personally. Watkins is nice, Saka is nice, Mitoma is nice. Trippier, I'm not sure if he would be someone that I'd be transferring in today, if that makes sense. So that's probably one of the moves that I have issues with. And sorry, so if I don't go Martinelli, I guess I could always just go a Dinger as well. You know, someone like that. It could also just be Mitoma. 2 moves there, that would be quite nice. But yeah, 2 free transfers, lots of moves to do. I mean, I could even do something like Lamptey to Gabriel. If I go Richarlison to Adingra, that would save me some money in the bank. And then obviously I can reconsider going for Saka on game week 12. So that's another option as well. But we have many sort of plans. And I think it also depends on, first of all, the European fixtures, right? A lot of people will be playing midweek. There could be some injuries, and that could actually create a lot of problems. So in terms of Lilas, nice to see you as well. Nuisance as well. Trossard comes clutch. We get, yeah, I think Trossard, like, for example, Trossard started even in the City game, right? So it's very possible that Martinelli's minutes are poor, and I don't really like the idea of Martinelli. As far as Ahmed, Mitoma maybe. Yeah, Mitoma's a great pick as well. See, I can't afford Mitoma if I'm, let's say, upgrading another defender and keeping Trippier, so that's a tough one there. So yeah, we'll have to see what happens, I would say. Son to Saka, I think, is a great move. If you don't have, let's say, a problem pick like Richarlison, like in my position, then Son to Saka is a perfectly good move. Yeah. Yeah, I'm feeling okay. Feeling all right. Still a little bit sick, unfortunately. Ferguson, I don't think is a good move. I think obviously Welbeck is injured, but honestly, Ferguson's minutes are not very appealing at all, even though the fixtures are perfect. I mean, like I think Adingra and Mitoma have much better minutes because actually right now within the forward positions and the central positions, you've got Ferguson, you've got Mitoma, sorry, you've got Ferguson, you've got Ansu Fati, and you've also got João Pedro, right? So 3 people competing for 2 positions. With Mitoma, I actually feel like it's almost 1-for-1. And with Adingra, with the March injury, I also think it's 1-for-1, right? Because we haven't seen Buonanotte too much. And I think Adingra is actually a very, very interesting pick. So if I go Adingra, and another thing too, I suppose, is I could always just go Son to Saka. It's not a bad move, right? It's not the worst move possible. This could save me a lot of money, but obviously I can afford Mitoma too, so I can just simply go for that as well. Thoughts on Trent compared to Trippier? I think Trent is in this fixture run. I do think Trent is better than Trips. But do you want to spend that sort of money on Trent? Probably not. I guess the way I'd see it is obviously, yes, of course, you just need to replace Trent for the City game. But outside of that, look, I mean, this run is perfect, isn't it? Like 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16. Like these are god tier games for Liverpool, right? I might even rather go Simicast as well, as I suggested. Is Trippier essential on the wild card? Because you've already missed out on his massive hauls. I don't think he's essential, as I said. I think you can definitely go without Trippier. You might even want to go Trent. I don't think you need to do that. What do you think about João Pedro as a second forward? I think Alvarez and Watkins are still absolutely the best in their positions. I don't think there's any need to spend money on the forwards, like if you're going to try and cheap out with the forwards, in my opinion. I would rather you play 4-5-1 because right now I still think João Pedro's minutes are not good enough. Yeah. That's sort of my opinion on that one. I think someone said they messaged me on Discord, so I'm just going to quickly have a look. I mean, feel free to ping up. Yeah, I can see your team now. So you're saying you've got... What's going on here? Do you have 2 free transfers? Is that what you have? I probably would actually consider dropping Ward-Prowse, if I'm honest. I don't really know how much money you have in the bank. You've got 1.3 million in the bank. I would actually consider Alvarez to Watkins, 100%. And then probably, because your defense is quite good, I'd probably roll the other transfer, I suppose. Unless you want to go Son to Saka as well. So I'm not sure if you can go Alvarez to Watkins, which probably is going to cost the entirety of your bank. I guess the only player I don't really like in your team is Ward-Prowse. But I can understand a lot of people like Ward-Prowse. This is a good fixture anyways for Ward-Prowse. I'm just thinking more long-term, of course. But then you can address that when you roll the free transfer as well, which means you can actually deal with Ward-Prowse after this fixture. Not a bad sort of problem to have. And then Neto obviously comes back into the team after this. And maybe you can address Ward-Prowse the week after. The question, I suppose, is after this week, is there anyone if you can actually downgrade Ward-Prowse to who could actually be quite good? And I think Adingra is an interesting pick if we continue to see really good minutes from him, but you can obviously assess that on Gameweek 11. But yeah, those are sort of my ideas. I mean, if you keep Alvarez as well, what's the alternative? I suppose you could always push Ward-Prowse into Mitoma. That could be a nice move. Or you can just simply go Ward-Prowse to Adingra. And then, yeah, I mean, it's really up to you what you want to do. I wouldn't go into Trippier. I don't think there's any priority transfers to make. I suppose you could actually go Simicast as well. Maybe Simicast over Udogi could be quite nice. Those are sort of the options you have, I would say. Alvarez is a little bit more of an optional move. It really just depends on whether, like, for example, if I was owning Alvarez this week, I'd find it very hard to sell into Watkins. Because even though it feels nice, unless you've got, let's say, 1 free transfer and you've got enough money to go Alvarez to Watkins in 1 move, if you're doing 2 moves just to facilitate Alvarez to Watkins, I feel like that doesn't feel perfectly good, particularly if, let's say, you're not confident on a Watkins captaincy. So it really depends on that as well. We're going back to chat. Gabriel Saliba or Zinchenko. I would go Gabriel. I think Zinchenko, look, 45-minute substitution. It's not a good sign. So I definitely wouldn't touch Zinchenko for the time being. Saliba, you probably get more guarantees. As far as Afonso's question: Tsimikas, Saka, and Matoma in for Porro, Madison, Neto. I think that's a great way to go, Saka. I think those are lovely moves. Thoughts on Alvarez for the upcoming? I think he's great still. Honestly, I thought I wanted to actually keep Alvarez in my team, but back then obviously I didn't have people like Palmer, people like Adingra who are ready and able to play in my team. So I went for a draft that was a 3-5-2. But now that you have so many options that are budget midfielders like Palmer, like Adingra, I would definitely go 3-4-3 and try to find a way to get towards that. If I had a nice, elegant way, for example, to go from Richarlison to Alvarez, I would probably have done so. The issue, of course, is that I don't. So that's quite tough for me this week from a decision-making point of view. So jealous of Gordon over Morgan Gibbs White. Yeah, I mean, look, it was sort of like an educated pick to go for someone who has actually better open play stats compared to, let's say, on-field stats, if we want to put it like that. I would say don't feel too bad about the decision. I still think Gibbs White is interesting. Ultimately, he's still a penalty taker. We know penalty takers have a lot of value in FPL. So, yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on Chris Wood, right? Because Chris Wood looked very good in the previous game in the context that he's really the only thing that they have. And there's no confidence seemingly in Origi. I'm not sure if he's injured as well. But that could also take away penalties from Morgan Gibbs White. So, tough. But at the same time, I'm looking at Gordon now, and I actually think that he can be a transfer in the future for Palmer or even Adingra. GV says, Gameweek 10 captaincy is going to be tough. Haaland's, I probably wouldn't consider Haaland at all. I definitely agree it's between Salah, Saka, and Watkins, and I probably would actually go in that order. I think that's 1, 2, 3 for me. Light Moon says, hi, Fran. Guehi plus James Ward-Prowse or Taylor plus Bowen 0. It really depends. Like, do you need Guehi? Are you going to play Guehi a lot? If so, go for Guehi plus James Ward-Prowse. I don't like James Ward-Prowse as a pick, personally. I also don't even like West Ham. Would you prefer Raya or Areola? I get that you're a beginner. I actually like both keepers. So the question is, why is it one or the other? Are you just looking for one simple free transfer? If so, I actually quite like the idea of going for Raya. But I think it's safer actually to go Areola, right? Because unless you've got a substitute second keeper, you might be in trouble. So I would say probably go with Areola. I think his position in the team is a little bit more certain for now, because I know Raya's made a few mistakes. We don't know obviously how Arteta will react. It's probably the case that Raya will continue to play and there shouldn't be anything to worry about. But I would say I'd be less worried about Areola's starting position in the team compared to Raya. But that's just my opinion. I have Solanke. Should I transfer him for Alvarez Game Week? Yeah, I think Solanke to Alvarez Game Week 11 is a fantastic move. Porro, you can also get rid of him on Game Week 11. So yeah, I mean, it really just depends on. I think there's much more upside, for example, always with an attacker transfer. So I would definitely prioritize the Alvarez move on Game Week 11. And Mbumo to Mitoma for a hit. I would not do that for a hit. Yeah, unlucky. Would you sell both Madison and Son to get Salah? I mean, if it gets you Salah and you're going to captain Salah, I think that's actually worthwhile for you. Thoughts on Areola versus Johnson as a keeper on Wildcard? I'd probably just go Areola, honestly. I think Crystal Palace is very good, but it's also a little bit overrated in the sense that, when Guehi and Anderson were getting consistently crazy points, people thought that, they were an impenetrable wall, and they're anything but that, if that makes sense. They're very, very competent defense, but also Areola plays for a much weaker team defensively, but he can get the saves as well. And he has been still pulling out some great saves, even though you can argue that the actual save on the Douglas Luiz shot, the first one, was not very good. Guehi to Reguilon. I think Reguilon is also too risky as a pick because we could obviously see Dalot invert. I've heard news, of course, that Wan-Bissaka is coming back very soon, so probably unlikely that very unlikely that Reguilon would keep his position in the team, even though Shaw is still quite a ways out. JT says, how would you rank Odegaard, Madison, Bruno? I would say Bruno number 1 for the next 3 weeks, then Odegaard, then Madison. Just because I think, for example, Madison, after the Fulham game, doesn't have 3 good fixtures, right? Bruno at least has 2 amazing fixtures, 1 really bad one, and the same situation for Odegaard. So in that context, I think because Madison has pure average ones, I would just go with Bruno because he's also the nailed penalty taker out of those 3. Think a punt on Edouard. I mean, I don't think it's worth it because Crystal Palace's attack look diabolical, personally. Good to see you're sounding better. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been drinking too much tea, although I will be actually appearing on the Who Got the Assist podcast later on, and I will be prepping for that with tea. That's for sure. Would you drop Haaland for Watkins and take out Son for Salah? I think those are good moves if you really want to capture the best captaincies in the future. I don't mind doing that. Up to you. You're thinking Madison to Saka and Taylor to Tsimikas. I think those are great moves. Any idea on how to cut 0.2 million off this wildcard game week 10 draft? Over budget, you say. I think you don't need Udogi on that draft. I can already see it. I just don't see what's the need for Udogi. Because, look, after the Fulham fixture, do Spurs really have any good defensive fixtures? In my opinion, they do not. Palmer, Saka, Dingler, Salah, Bowen. I think also maybe reconsider Bowen. I think Bowen's probably holding up a little bit of your money. So consider the two positions, Bowen and Udogi. Can you change them around? Those are the two players where I would say easily I could justify making a transfer out of them. I personally don't rate Bowen too highly. I know that might offend some people in the chat here, but that's my opinion. Manon says, hi, Fran, on wildcard this week. Yeah, I like the 3-4-3. I've actually made a wildcard draft video, so feel free to check that one out. Pujan says he's thinking of upgrading Mbeumo to Saka. Look, I mean, I think Mbeumo to Saka is a wonderful move. Morris, I suppose. Can you go from Morris to Watkins? How much is Morris nowadays? Yeah, I guess because you can't go Morris to Watkins, I think it's lovely to go Mbeumo to... The thing is, do you have to play Morris, though? I suppose that's the question as well. What do you think of Nunez if he starts? I think Nunez is an amazing pick, but the question is, I can't guarantee that he starts, right? He could start next week, but then the next week after that, he may be on the bench. So it's very hard to justify going for Nunez right now. You did indeed take out Guardiola for Dalla before the deadline. No problem, Yusuf. I'm glad my deadline advice helped. You sold Son and Kabore for this week. Fair enough. I think selling Son makes sense because at least you've given him the Fulham fixture, and then Kabore obviously doesn't really have any value. What do you? Good morning to you, FPL Dream. Would you transfer Bruno for Saka? I probably would, yes. Or Richarlison for Diaby. Definitely. Ooh, that's a tough one. I would see how Richarlison plays, right? And then make a decision. Because obviously Bruno has really good fixtures after this. So you can kind of conveniently justify keeping Bruno. But the issue with Richarlison is, for example, if he stinks it up once again, right? Then Brennan Johnson can steal his position. And very quickly, Richarlison's a bad pick. So I would say, obviously, see what happens tonight. See if Richarlison performs well. If he doesn't perform well, then just go for Diaby because it's safer. And you'll at least own Bruno, who's absolutely nailed for two great fixtures, which is obviously the Luton Fulham games. Jamie, Jared, yeah, Bowen, that was some jam. I'm not going to talk too much about it. I was salty enough on Twitter, and I know it's disappointed some people, so let's move on. Play Onana or Turner? Definitely Turner. I mean, look, it's so bad for both of them. Honestly, I'd play Onana, maybe. Play Onana, yeah. At least he's at home, right? So I think that's nice. Is 3-4-3 the way to go? I think so, yeah. I actually think it's the best way to go. And you don't even need 5 to 6 million midfielders. We've got 4.9 midfielders that are amazing that you can actually put as your fifth midfielder. So would you sell Odegaard for Saka this week? Ooh, I don't think that's worth a free transfer, unfortunately. Tsimikas or Gabriel? I mean, if you had 2 free transfers and you had a great team and you were able to roll the other one, then I would do that. But yeah, it's a little bit sideways, even though I do think Saka's better. Hey, Henry, how are you? Or should I say Wenry? Should I hold Bowen on wildcard or keep Madison? I think you can go Bowen because I still think Bowen has better fixtures than Madison in a sense. So would you sell Odegaard for Saka this week, or is it not worth a free transfer in your opinion? Personally, yeah. Sorry, I already responded to that one. Tsimikas or Gabriel? I probably think Tsimikas is nicer in terms of the next 2 weeks, but Gabriel probably might have some more long-term value. So it's about to you. How about Colwell's fixtures? I mean, Colwell is kind of useless to me outside of Game Week 10 and Game Week 14. But for me, I'm holding Colwell just for 16 plus, basically. So he's going to be in my team forever. Hold Gusto, or will he make way for Reece James? I do think, unfortunately, he will be making way for Reece James because also Cucurella is playing really well. Hard to see Gusto finding another position in the team. I do think Reece James will steal his minutes. Thoughts on Saliba and Virgil? I think they're both great picks. Obviously, Saliba I think is a little bit overpriced, but with Virgil, at least you can argue that no one else in the team is really nailed between Matip and Konate, so I can understand going for Virgil and sort of pushing up there. Tonsillitis isn't the best, but I'm working my way through it. Who would you prioritize in selling out of Madison and Bowen? Probably Madison, honestly, because Bowen still has Everton at home next week. What's my transfer plan? So I've sort of revealed it previously. It's Richarlison out for sure. Let's just pencil in Saka for now. So that into Trippier, Gabriel, or this can be Tsimikas. So that's 2 transfer plans. Or I go out of Son as well, and then I go into someone like Mitoma, or I even go into someone like Adingra, or I go for someone like Bowen, who's an option as well. And then Martinelli, I don't really like so much, so I'm not really going to talk about Martinelli. So those are my options, really. So either Son out or Trippier out, and then obviously Richarlison out to go Saka. The alternative option, if I don't go for Saka at all, is if I go Adingra, for example, and then just still go with Gabriel. I guess at the end of the day, that would save me a bit of money, and then obviously I can kind of play around with my transfers in the future. That's another alternative option. So yeah, that's my sort of transfer plans for now. But obviously, we'll see what happens with the Spurs game, and I can react with Richarlison as well. I actually really like your moves, Uday Gaming. Yeah, those two free transfers from Discord are nice. Would you sell Alvarez to get Bowen? No, I don't think so. How good is Mitoma? Is Diaby better? I don't think Diaby's better. I think they're both fantastic. So I wouldn't really move, from one to the other. I would class that as a sideways transfer. And want Trippier because you have Burn. I honestly don't think Trippier is essential. That's my genuine opinion. I'm happy to move out of Trippier myself. I've been owning Trippier for quite a few weeks now. If we look back into my team, I mean, I've basically owned Trippier since game week 6, 7, 8, and he's been amazing, right? But I do also think it's very, very shortly soon to be time to go, because still, like, look at the fixtures, right? In the historical fixtures, it's not like Trippier is fixture proof. 1 to 4 is a good example. 5 to 9 are perfect fixtures, right? Home versus Brentford. Brentford are a good attacking team, obviously, so that was a really good shutout. But Sheffield, Burnley, Crystal Palace, these are all horrific offensive teams. And then West Ham as well, who are not particularly good on offense, still scored 2 versus them. And that shows you the power, of course, of away fixtures as well. So the fact that obviously the next few best fixtures for Newcastle are all away, and they have some pretty tough home fixtures, for me, is good enough reason to say I'm happy to jump out of Trippier until, let's say, game week 17, and then I can revisit Trippier by then. As far as, let's say, my next transfers from FPL Dream, Wiesa to Watkins, and those transfers are incredible, Dream. Honestly, incredible transfers. I love those two moves. See, that's the thing. It's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I love Adingra as a pick. I think he's fantastic, but what do I do after I have Adingra in my team? I've got 1.9 million in the bank. What would you guys do if you had the Adingra move? I don't really know what I can do to maximize my budget. That's sort of the issue that I'm having. A crazy move that I had in mind is to go out of Diaby into Saka. But I think that's a little bit delusional, right? What do you guys think? Because I think I've got to give Diaby versus Luton Town a chance, right? So yeah, I mean, if Diaby gets injured, then that's going to be my move. But, very unlikely that that's the case. Robert says, -8 for Son to Salah, Højlund to Mubama, and Udogi to Tsimikas. I like those moves if you can actually, if for example, you're already playing a 3-5-2, then that's nice. A -8, though, I think is just too much of a stretch. I probably wouldn't do that, but I can understand. If you want to captain Salah as well, you could justify that as well a little bit more. JP says, thoughts on Arsenal and Chelsea. I thought Chelsea were the much better team, but it also shows you that the change in Arsenal this season is, first of all, Arteta's actually trusting the depth with his team, and you're actually seeing really sort of poignant substitution. So his man management, despite struggling, right, not getting the game plan initially right, was good. So, I mean, good on Arteta for that. But Chelsea were actually very dominant. I think, of course, Pochettino, to an extent, you can actually argue that some of his substitutions were a little bit immature, I suppose, just because you're already dominating the game. You want to shut it down. I don't know if, for example, bringing in Jackson, who's, coming back from surgery, etc., is the right move. Like, why not just consolidate the game with the players? But obviously, this is a lot of hindsight. But I think very impressed, honestly, with, in general, Chelsea's performance. Once again, more confidence in Palmer as a pick, more confidence in Chelsea in general. And I've been saying it. A lot of people have been sort of saying to me, Chelsea are only good versus bad teams. That game proves it for me. I mean, they've been able to draw versus Liverpool so far, been able to draw versus Arsenal. I think Chelsea are a very competent team, and if you're actually underrating them, I think you're crazy. If you're underrating Man United, you're right, because they're awful. And that's the big difference. Like, Chelsea and Man United actually have very similar points on the table, but Chelsea are much, much better as a team right now, just in terms of the overall 11s, the injuries and things like that. Chelsea can only really improve, in my opinion, in the future, whereas with United, I can't really see where too many improvements are coming from. Even Højlund is a huge improvement, and they still look terrible. Dylan says, Fran, do trips to Trent. Is that someone who knows that I owned Trent for pretty much half the season last year? It could be a good move, actually. I'll be thinking about it. Spurs game off. Are you trolling? Please tell me you're trolling. Yeah, okay, you're trolling. Thank you, though. I appreciate that. Gave me a little bit of a fright there. Just a little bit. What was the point of that, though? Trying to hurt my feelings. Um, Gordon or Matoma? I probably would go Matoma, honestly. Fixtures are still better for Matoma. QPR loss. Sorry about that, Charlie. Maybe Kenny will finally come on loan soon. Sophie Fran approved Bowen alternatives. I think just save money, right, Sophie? Because you actually had Trippier, I believe. Why not go for someone like Dallo and then actually go for a cheaper midfielder like Matoma? You can actually upgrade on Udogi and go for someone like Dallo who can actually sit on your bench and actually have really good fixtures on, let's say, 11 and 12. I know it's United, but alternatively, I suppose another thing you could do is if you don't back Dallo, I guess you can always just go for another Newcastle defender or something like that. Remember when you capped Trent in the one time he didn't outscore Salah? Yeah, but I also remember that I did captain Trent in a Merseyside derby, and guess what happened? Salah scored 1 goal, 1 assist, and Trent scored nothing because actually Demarai Gray scored a goal. So I don't have fond memories of actually captaining Trent, but I do absolutely love owning Trent as a pick. Supremacy. What is this about? Oof. I think Richarlison might be actually benched. It's over. That's going to be sad. I'm going to need Richarlison. I mean, honestly, but to be fair, Richarlison as a super sub is probably still the best case scenario for me. I can't really do anything about it. Oh, Henry, you too. Nice. Thoughts on Doucouré, Everton? I think he's underrated. Obviously, he's playing in an advanced role this season, but it's still Everton, right? At the end of the day, I'm not exactly sure I'd like to back them. Like, as you can see, obviously, when I go with Gordon, or even when I suggest a Dinger or Palmer, I'm sort of looking at teams with better team strength. So yeah, what do you do with Richarlison? I think Gordon or Matoma. I mean, I can go Matoma. I can go Adingra. I can actually just go Saka as well via Trippier. Adam, what do you need my help with? Tsimikas or Guehi on the wild card. I'd definitely go Tsimikas. Watch the news. Spurs game off. I mean, what are you talking about? I can't see any news about that. Are you reading news from a couple of years ago? Am I a psycho for not wanting to go Fernandes to Saka? I mean, I can understand because you're sort of thinking, hey, I'm trading up to Saka. He's got a good fixture versus Sheffield United, but then he's got a bad fixture versus Newcastle, which is the exact same situation that Bruno has, a bad fixture than a good fixture. So if you don't want to do that, I mean, you don't need to. Your non-Salah draft is, hey, Eddie, should you take out a -8 Fernandes, Madison, Luis Diaz, Son for Salah, Saka, Mitoma? I think those are good moves. Just because you can get Salah in, and that might give you a bit of peace of mind. I don't love it, obviously, as you know. I don't really love taking hits. If you can somehow do it for a -4, I'd rather prefer that, for example. But I can understand. Why Udogi to Tsimikas? Because Udogi doesn't have good defensive fixtures after this week. Should your transfer Udogi to Gabriel or roll a free transfer? I think Udogi to Gabriel or Udogi to Tsimikas are good moves. Would you bench Burn or Udogi this coming week? I'd probably bench Burn, right? At least Udogi has a bit of attacking upside. Guys, what is going on with the Spurs game news, please? I don't have Salah on my team, but the rest of my team is very good. I still have my wild card. Would you rather do a wild card in Gameweek 10? Look, I think, honestly, this judgment has to be done by yourself, right? All wild cards are team dependent. If you actually think your team is actually looking good and it doesn't have Salah in it, and you don't really care about Salah captaincies, then fine. But if you want to capture the Salah captaincies, I can understand wildcarding for that. Alan says, what are your top 3 price midfielders? You mean kind of budget midfielders, right? I think Adingra is incredible. I think Palmer's a little bit of a cheat answer because actually I only think he exists, as a good pick in a 3-4-3 where he's sort of the 5th midfielder. So he's sort of pure budget, pure bench for the next few weeks. Yeah, I think Gordon's great. I think at the same time, Douglas Luiz is great. I'm not sure about Neto, to be honest. I'd probably actually rate Adingra over him. Leanne says, I'm on 72, ranked 16th. That is so awesome. Yeah, I think you would absolutely kill it again, Leanne, with the 3 Spurs players. So good luck to you. And obviously the 3 best Spurs players to have on paper. So good luck with that. Can Martial get a few starts now that he's fit and Højlund not scoring? I mean, probably, right? We're seeing Højlund subbed off early nowadays, which is possible. But I think obviously I'm not sure about starts for Martial, and I definitely wouldn't be punting towards Martial anytime soon. Diraj says his non-Salah draft is as such. I mean, I like the draft that you have personally. I guess it's all about, whether you believe. Look, honestly, I just have to say though that Salah has fixtures that are incredible compared to the Spurs midfielders. So what does it need to sort of keep all these Spurs midfielders? Orwa says he needs 7 points to be in the 1 million. I think you probably will, to be honest, based on the fact that you have 3 players to play. What's the thinking behind Adingra? I think he's incredible because if you think about it, right, look at Adingra's minutes so far, right? Really good minutes. And the only games he's really benched is when March actually plays, right? When March starts ahead of him. But what has happened recently? Because of the left back injuries, March had to play left back. And that's what has allowed Adingra in the last 2 games to play 90 minutes per game. Now, if March is out full time, no one is there right now to really replace those right winger minutes. And I think Adingra is an incredible pick for the time being. So let's have a look at the Europa League fixture. Let's see what happens with Brighton. I personally think that, Buonanotte seems to be an option just based on historical sort of factors. But he's actually barely been in the squad. And you can see that he's very young. He's very raw. They don't have injuries. They don't have Enciso coming back anytime soon. Adingra for me is just an insane valuable pick because Brighton, I mean, look at these fixtures. Fulham at home, Everton away, Sheffield United at home, Nottingham Forest away. These are all fixtures that are actually packed pretty much over the course of the next month. And ultimately, I think he's going to get those 4 fixtures. And if you can get those 4 fixtures from Adingra, I think he's incredible value. 78 points off top 10k. Yeah, I think it's just, look, FPL's a marathon. Jay Bird says, Toko -4, swooped out James Ward-Prowse and Darwin for Alvarez and Matoma. I think great picks there. Small doubt. Ooh, okay, I see what you mean. I mean, I guess you don't need to do Ward-Prowse to Matoma. You don't have to, right? Because it's still a good Ward-Prowse game. Is Trent worth it in a non-Holland draft? I think so, obviously. If you go non-Holland, I mean, I can't see why Trent wouldn't be worth it. You have 58 points waiting for Sun Captaincy. Oh, that should be awesome, actually. Sun Captaincy is going to be a huge differential. Adam says, what do you think of Ansu Fati? I mean, Ansu Fati is very different. Ansu Fati has less minutes in the team, right? So if you look at Ansu Fati, he is a good midfielder, but look at the minutes so far. It's been really bad. 25, 45, 45, 26. Like he is only playing in central positions, which is nice, obviously, for his goal scoring potential. But you also have to look at the fact that he just lacks the minutes to sort of, meet that potential, the full potential, that is. So I think Ansu Fati is very risky as a pick still. Because even though Welbeck seems to be injured, even Welbeck's injury is short term, right? When you compare it to, let's say, Adingra, March's injury seems to be a bit more short term, a bit more medium to long term. And we'll get updates, obviously, from press conferences. Jerome says, got 2 free transfers and Robertson injured. I mean, probably in that situation, you could probably just budget down, I would say, maybe just beef up your midfield, or you can obviously go Trippier somehow. Jay Bird says he wants to get Matoma in for these fixtures. Yeah, that makes sense. Dynamic completely changes when Fati comes on, needs to play more. I mean, he's done well as a super sub, right? 2 goals so far. Yep. I mean, we'll see what happens, obviously. Obviously, I think João Pedro and Ferguson both have been struggling, but also you can argue that they've been facing tough teams, right? Liverpool and City are probably 2 of your toughest opponents. Even Aston Villa is a tough game. Right now, you're literally you're pretty much facing these bottom half teams, which is obviously fantastic. Bowen or Madison, I'd probably still go Bowen. You think Fati is less? You think he should be less than 6.5 million or more than 6.5 million? Why is it that when I go to player info, they are a higher price than when I try to sell them? It's because actually you're only allowed to recuperate 0.1 for every 0.2 price gain that you actually own for a player. So let's sort of make an example, right? If I own Colwill at 4.5, which I do, if he rises to 4.7, I can only sell him for 4.6 because every 2 price rises, I can only sell back 0.1. Whereas, for example, if I was, let's say, if I never owned Colwill, I'd have to buy him at 4.7. So it's sort of the logic that this game has, which sort of forces you to keep players and hold them, but prioritize points over transfer value. So basically, every 0.2 a player earns in your team. So for example, Cash is 5.1. I think I bought him at 4.8. So that's why, for example, I own him at 4.9. So if he gets another price rise, then I will own him at 5.0. But that's just how price rises work. So you can only get back 50% effectively. But obviously, let's say if you get 0.3 price rises, it only counts for 0.1 sell back. So you need basically every time 0.2, 0.2. Lamptey out, that could make sense. Why Richarlison over Maddison? I just couldn't afford Maddison because I wanted to go Trippier. What would be the biggest hit you would take to get Salah in? Probably a -4 at best. Lamptey out. Yeah, I think Lamptey's injured still. Do you think Tsimikas will get good minutes? I think he'll get good minutes in these easy fixtures, so it should be yes. Is Saka an essential buy in 10? I think he's pretty close to an essential buy. Up to you whether you think he's essential, though. I wouldn't ever really call anyone essential, other than maybe Salah right now. If Maddison does well today, you're screwed. So am I. So we're in the same camp. What are your thoughts on doubling City attack? I think the only double up I would ever do is Alvarez and Haaland. I think Foden is. I think Foden's got to go if you own Foden, to be honest. And I would not think about going into Foden. What's my plan with Lamptey? I mean, he could just be Gabriel, right? Jerome says his captain still hasn't played this week. A lot is riding on this game. Yeah, I mean, good luck to you. A lot is riding on this game for me as well, in the sense that I need Richarlison to do something, and I need Maddison to be a bit quiet. Diaby wasn't too strong. I mean, he could have got 1 assist, but yeah, obviously I agree. I concur that it wasn't too strong. The reality is, though, he still is playing Luton Town next week, so I would just go with Diaby. Go for Diaby next week, enjoy Diaby next week, see what happens, and then probably consider transferring him out. Trippier, Cash, Udogi, Gabriel, who do I bench? Probably Udogi next week. Maddison to Mitoma, worth the risk. I think it's a very good move. Go back to 2 minutes. You asked the same question. Did Diaby to Mitoma? I'd probably actually keep Diaby for this week, and I'd save Mitoma as a Game Week 11 transfer. Maddison to Adingra, plus Morris to Nunez Alvarez for -4. I don't really like it as a -4. Do you think Diaby? I mean, Diaby to Saka is a nice move if it's just one free transfer for you, but if you're spending 2 free transfers for it, it probably doesn't make too much sense. Does Palmer? I think Palmer only makes sense if you can actually try. Like, for example, if you can go Palmer this week, it basically is saying that you're going for. I think you need 8 attackers, and he basically needs to replace effectively what Archer does in a 3-5-2, right? Where Palmer is basically that 5th midfielder in a 3-4-3. If you can't accommodate a 3-4-3, I don't really see the value of Palmer, unless, for example, you have, let's say, 5 defenders in your team and you're super stacked. So that's what I would say about that. Adingra or Mitoma, I'd probably go Adingra if you can actually get some upgrades. Otherwise, obviously, just go Mitoma. I'd still, for example, like if budget wasn't really a problem, then Mitoma's obviously better. Son to Saka, depending on tonight's game. I think Son to Saka, regardless, is a very good move because it's still Saka versus Sheffield United at home. Can you go without Saka next few weeks? I think you can go Saka either Game Week 10 or Game Week 12, right? Because you don't really need Saka for Game Week 11. It's an awful fixture. But the whole point is that if you want to go Saka now, this is the best time, just because Sheffield United at home is a really, really good game. Yeah, as far as other moves, let's have a look. Do you consider Watkins to Alvarez a serious upgrade? What do you mean, like from Alvarez to Watkins or Watkins to Alvarez? I think it's an upgrade for Game Week 10, but then obviously you can just make the same point that, let's say, Watkins to Alvarez is actually a really good move as well, like going back for Bournemouth. So it's a side grade. It's sort of like a side grade move because actually, as it bears out, I think both have great fixtures on 10 versus 11. But it really just depends. Like if you're in a luxury position where you can do that, and actually your midfield and your defense looks good, then that's a move that you can definitely make. Best captaincy for Game Week 10. I mean, probably if I was to pick my, I mean, based on my team right now, it would probably be Salah, Watkins. But actually, I think Salah, then Saka, then Watkins, then Haaland for me, in terms of order. Yeah, is probably how I would go. What am I planning to do with Lamptey? I mean, I was never really planning to do anything with him. You know, just going for a 3.9 defender. If he was able to be played, if he was able to be selected versus Fulham, then obviously I would love to have him. But it seems like he's obviously still injured. So we'll see what happens. don't have any plans really with him, actually, if we're being honest. Mitoma or Diaby? I would probably go Diaby, actually, just for the Luton fixture. Maddison to Saka and James Ward-Prowse to Gordon, or James Ward-Prowse to Mitoma and Udogie to Gabriel. I actually prefer your second move. But actually, I don't know. Maddison to Saka is a brilliant move as well, I would say. But James Ward-Prowse to Gordon isn't the best move, just because Gordon doesn't have a perfect fixture and James Ward-Prowse actually has a good fixture. Whereas with the situation where you're going from James Ward-Prowse to Mitoma and Udogie to Gabriel, you're sort of upgrading in both instances, right? I think Mitoma is better than James Ward-Prowse. I think Gabriel is better than Udogie for Gameweek 10. Who are you considering selling Trippier to? Either Gabriel or Tsimikas are my ideas for now. Neto or Adingra? I'd probably go Adingra. You've done Botman and Bruno to Saka and Tsimikas. Yeah, very good moves. Very good moves. Salah or Saka for me, but I prefer Salah because Saka is not too much into penalties. Yeah, exactly. Saka could give them away at the same time. And honestly, look, this Liverpool attack actually generally does look better than the Arsenal attack. That's my opinion. And I don't think that's going to change. So far, the Arsenal attack has struggled. I think that's a fair point to make. The reality is, though, the Arsenal defense looks incredible. Son/Morgan Gibbs-White to Saka / Diaby. Yeah, I think those are good moves. You don't want to do Alvarez to Watkins, then don't do it. Don't do it. I understand. Like, I was struggling to go out of Alvarez on the wild card, but I've just chosen not to do so. You've not got Salah. Really unsure whether to captain. I think Saka or Watkins are both great picks, so it's sort of a 50-50 there. Should I sell Shah or Udogie to Gabriel? I'd probably sell Udogie. Morgan Gibbs-White to Mitoma for -4. I think it does pay off in the long run. Son plus Maddison to Saka Odegaard. I think those are nice moves. I'm not sure if I love Odegaard that much, but it's not a bad move. Watkins best captain for Gameweek 10. I think it's still Salah, and then I think it's Saka. And I was actually put Watkins ahead of Haaland. He'd probably be my third pick. That's probably how I would tier them all. Diaby or Mitoma? I'd probably still go Diaby. Is Diaby worth it even with Watkins and cash? I think so, just because Luton Town is such a good game. But at the same time, I could, like, if you feel like you're, you know, for whatever reason you have too many Aston Villa assets, you don't want to sort of hedge yourself in that game, then go for Mitoma. I really think that both Diaby and Mitoma are great picks. Probably Mitoma you feel like you've got more confidence in because Mitoma has been sort of a little bit more consistent as of late. So you can go with Mitoma. Thoughts on Odson Edouard? I've got no interest in him, unfortunately. I just think the Crystal Palace attack is actually really struggling. Yeah, I think their attack is very, very poor. Any potential price rise? Let's have a look. Potential price rises seem... I mean, I don't think anyone's actually going to get a price rise, but it seems like Salah's close. And then actually all of these sort of picks seem like wildcard picks, so I wouldn't really say anyone's actually close to a rise, unfortunately. As far as Maddison to Mitoma and Porro to Trippier, those are nice moves. I'm not sure if I would love to go into Trippier now, but I can still concur. Obviously, that Porro to Trippier is an upgrade. In that direction. Which is better? Anup says combo 1 or combo 2. I kind of like combo. I think I like combo 1, I would say. Palmer and Salah confirmed price rise nights. I don't think they're confirmed, but I think it's possible. Keep in mind that wildcard transfers don't actually affect price rises. And it's very likely that both the transfers towards Palmer and Salah are wildcard related. You're on wildcard considering going without Tottenham attacker. I think that's correct. I think that they've been overrated in terms of the attack, right? Because actually their performance so far on attack hasn't been particularly good. Sorry, my camera's like a little bit out of focus. Hopefully it sort of fixes itself. Unfortunately, it is not. All right, that's terrible. Sorry about that. Basically, technical issues. Game week 10 transfer in Bowen or Mitoma. I'd probably still go Mitoma. I think saving a little bit of money is nice there. Henry says, when he wildcarded in 8, got Sun, Rose twice, and still in the same window, did I get 0.1? Yeah, you would have. You would have got that 0.1. You feel cross-eyed. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my camera. All right, see, finally it works. Why does no one talk about Foster? I think Foster's good, but the reality as well with Burnley is that they're probably one of the worst teams in the league. So I can understand why people don't want to back weak teams. And it's not like he has a double game week anymore, right? So every time you're sort of backing Foster, you're backing single game week Foster, and unfortunately, when the probabilities aren't doubled for Foster, people aren't going to particularly like him. But I do think he's a good pick. Like, he's very comparable to, for example, when I say Palmer is very good for a 3-4-3 draft as a fifth attacker in the midfield position, then obviously Foster is sort of the same thing in a 3-5-2 draft where you sort of replace Archer, who's honestly terrible, with Foster. You should have Porro instead of Colwell. I'll probably actually play. I mean, we'll see what happens. Yeah. I mean, it'll be a 50-50 for me. Who to start in Gameweek 10 between Sufal and Udogi? I'd probably start Sufal, actually. Do you think having a Newcastle defender is essential? Personally not. I'm probably going to go out of my only Newcastle defender next week. Do you not like Bowen as a pick? Is it because West Ham are struggling offensively? Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I think their team strength is very weak. It's very clear that I think Moyes likes to continue playing Antonio. I don't think, for example, it would be some sort of incredible upside for Bowen to suddenly start playing center forward in a team as weak as that. For example, when you look at Antonio's underlying stats as the center forward, it's not like they're incredible. It doesn't necessarily mean that suddenly when you go from a wide position to a central position that you immediately become a better FPL asset. I think that's not true. And Salah is a great example of that. It's not like Salah central suddenly is a completely different pick. Like, some of these players are actually better playing out wide or, behind a striker. Why no Saka? Because I'll probably go Saka next week, Rasmus. He's going to be my Game Week 10 transfer. What would be the best option without Trippier on the 3-4-3 draft? I mean, probably Trent, right? Probably Trent. Porro, Tsimikas, and Maddison to Saka, or just Maddison to Martinelli. I love the two transfers that you have. I don't like going to Martinelli personally. I think Maddison, for example, I would still probably keep Maddison over Martinelli. Because I think Martinelli's minutes are a little bit shaky right now. Really gutted Eze is injured. Yeah, I mean, Eze would have been incredible. I would take him out, unfortunately. I don't know. I mean, when is his expected return date? Because I'm not even sure. I haven't been following sort of Eze news whatsoever. Is Son to Saka and Estupinian down to Gabriel good moves? I think those are good moves. Keeping Alvarez versus United is perfectly fine, honestly. What's the 5 to 6 most essential players for a wildcard this week? I think Salah. Personally, I would still say Haaland. Watkins, probably. Gabriel, Tsimikas, Areola. That's 6 players for you. And Saka as well. I don't know if I mentioned Saka. Money is no issue with no Haaland. Of course, that's true. You're also on Porro bench, but you don't think... Yeah, I mean, Palace... I know they're horrific, but still, I'm a very big away and home man, as you know. Would you do Shard, Diaby, and Morris to Gabriel, Dinger, and Watkins for -4? Probably, actually. Yeah. Those are all good moves. Money is no issue with no Haaland. Yep, sorry, we read that already. You'd take Brighton midfielders instead of Arsenal, except Saka. Makes sense. So you missed the Spurs game in Burnley, then he's back for Everton, Luton, West Ham, Bournemouth. Sorry, we talk about Foster now. Or, sorry, we talk about Eze, sorry. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Your big home, yep. That's why you bench Gordon over him. That makes sense too as well. Actually, I might bench Gordon over Porro. What would you do to keep out of Son, Maddison if you wanted Saka? I would probably keep Son. I like to keep my penalty takers in my team. So I'd probably keep Son. Who's a good transfer instead of Gordon? Adingra, I think, is a great transfer. Sold Son for Maddison so I can keep Trippier. I think Cash is a bit overrated. I think that's fine. I think, for example, I could replace Cash quite quickly as well. Mitoma or Diaby, please help me, bro. Look, I'd probably go Mitoma, honestly. I think Diaby has a better fixture, but Mitoma, I feel like, is a better asset long term. Keeping Trippier is nice, obviously, but I'm not in a position where I can really keep Trippier, right? So it is what it is. Has the time to take Haaland out? I think so. I think the best time, obviously, to take out Haaland was Game Week 8. And, I mean, like, 1 week after next week, you're just going to have Haaland back, right, for the Game Week 11 captaincy. And not after that, but only Game Week 13, he's probably going to be a great captaincy option again, unless you want to go Son captaincy on Game Week 13. So I do think the time has passed, but it also depends on your budget, right? If your budget's really poor and you prefer Salah, I can understand going Salah. Palmer or Adingra? I think Adingra is nicer just because for Palmer, you actually have to have defense to cover the bad fixtures for Chelsea, whereas Adingra can actually start the next few games. Twisted Sparky says on 96 2 to play, that's insane. Think bringing in Simicast for Burn and then week 10, Udogi out, Gabriel in. Fantastic moves. You can't have Gabriel and Burn as we'll have 5 Arsenal. Oh, okay, that makes sense. And Højlund versus Darwin. I think right now Højlund's minutes have sort of dropped, so unfortunately I think he's going to drop on my cheat sheet as well. I think I'd probably prioritize Darwin for the time being, but actually you need to know obviously that Darwin is going to deal with a lot of rotation. My 2 favorite picks are obviously always going to be Alvarez and Watkins. Am I playing UCL Fantasy? I am indeed. Ben Gates says, unsure whether to play Mbumo or Udogi or take a -4 from Matoma. I'd probably actually just play Mbumo. I don't think a -4 makes too much sense. Is Cash really a good asset still? I mean, he is a good asset in the sense that he plays Luton Town at home next. Is he essential? Absolutely not. 2 free transfers, James Ward-Prowse to Matoma or James Ward-Prowse to Gordon. I like the move where you actually go Maddison to Saka because I think Maddison to Saka is incredible. Would Brennan Johnson take the place of Richarlison? I think Brennan Johnson can easily take the place of Richarlison, and I'm very worried about that even today, even tonight, for example. Would you have Haaland as a captain versus Liverpool in Game Week 13? Yeah, I would. Should I get Saka in for Maddison or Son, depending on today? I probably would get him over Maddison. If I can keep Son, I probably would. Took a -4 and swapped Alvarez, Son, and Diaz for Archer, Salah, and Gordon. You think that's a good move? I mean, you've already done it, and I think those are good moves in the sense that you've brought in good players. The question, of course, is that you've sort of brought in 3 starters and you've sort of taken back 2. So how is your team going to accommodate for the fact that you now have only 2 starters, I suppose? Would you sell Haaland to get Salah? I probably wouldn't. But if I had 2 free transfers, I would have considered it, this week or last week. I mean, this week, I suppose you can do it again if you want to. But I probably wouldn't do it for a hit. I'm probably going to end the stream in around 5 minutes as well. 1 hour left. And then actually we find out the lineups. And I'm probably going to be quite sad when Richarlison gets benched. And I'll have to just react to that. But we'll see. Hopefully there's some midweek injuries. Maybe I can actually make some nicer transfers. I feel like everyone is asking about Maddison to Saka. I do think Maddison to Saka, like you either do the Maddison to Saka move this week or you do it, in Game Week 12 or Game Week 13. It doesn't make sense to do it in Game Week 11. But if you want to jump onto a player who's got an incredible game versus Sheffield United at home, that's why you want to do that Maddison to Saka move. So, as I said, it's just really up to what you want to do. Richa starts. I mean, who says Richarlison starts? It seems like Paul O'Keefe actually suggests that Richarlison's going to be benched. So, I'm pretty bummed about that. Archer won't really start as Watkins and Haaland are top 2. That makes sense. You took a punt on Dallo this week and got 11 points. Yeah, that's awesome. I think we talked about Dallo, on the live stream as a great punt, and I'm glad it worked out for you. Bowen, good pick for Wildcard. I think he's okay. I think Bowen's a little bit overhyped, but, he still plays Everton at home. I don't think Richarlison will start for sure. I've already seen some people suggesting that he might be benched. So I'm kind of worried. We'll see what happens, of course. Maybe it's a lie, maybe it's not. Are non-Trippier Newcastle defenders transfers out next week? I think Trippier is a transfer out next week as well. You have hyped me on Adingra, but I can only get both him and Salah by selling Bowen. Yeah, you don't have to sell Bowen. It doesn't make sense, right? Bowen's got a good game. Salah says, is Salah still the go-to captain? I think Salah's a better captain next week for sure. What would you do with Turner, Onana, Trippier, Gabriel, Cash, Udogi, Batman? Saka, Maddison, Diaby, Foden, Fernandes. I'd probably prioritize going Foden out. Other than that, I think your team's actually in really good shape. Maybe you can go Botman out as well and just move them into players like Simicast, move them into players like, I don't know, for example, Matoma or Bowen. Those sorts of picks. I currently have Cash, Udogi, and Burn and 2 fodder defenders. Is that serviceable? Probably not. I probably would actually have to recommend you to go Dallo next week or Gabriel this week. So Gabriel on 11 or Gabriel on 10 or Dallo on 11. So it's really up to you, like what you think your team needs. Even Simicast as well is a good pick as well. Simicast actually might be better because he covers 10 and 11. Whereas, for example, Gabriel and Dallo sort of cover opposite fixtures on 10 and 11. But obviously, Gabriel has more long-term value, I would say. Let's try not spam the chat, though, Mr. Key. But I would say I probably wouldn't do the... I'd probably do the -4 play. Is Watkins a priority? I think Watkins is a priority, yes, but is he essential? Not really, because I think if you own Alvarez, I probably wouldn't recommend going from Alvarez to Watkins unless you're going to captain Watkins as well. So it really depends. Like, let's say if your only way to go to Watkins is Alvarez, I probably wouldn't do that move. But yeah, up to you on that. Ooh, it looks like the Ajax head coach has been sacked. Interesting news. All right, I think that's the chat starting to slow down. 140 of you guys here. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys could like and subscribe, that would be really, really appreciated. I hope you guys take care, and I will see you guys probably, next week on the deadline stream. But at the same time, I think also I'll be doing a lot of videos this week. So if you guys have any video ideas, just feel free to drop that in the chat. Last question, I think, is your differential picks for next game week. I would say a dinger, honestly. But yeah, take care, guys. And thank you, Rasmus. Thank you, everyone else in the chat. Really appreciated you guys being around, and I hope you guys enjoy the Spurs game. And if you don't have any Spurs players, just, I hope you guys have already had a good game week anyway. So take care, and I'll see you guys next week.